My Amish neighbor Daniel hasn't bought a bottle of pesticide in 50 years, not one. Most American gardeners, and I was right there with them for 3 decades, spend a small fortune every season fighting the same bugs that come back worse every year. Daniel doesn't fight them. He brews a mix from a flower and a few common pantry items, and the pests are gone by morning. The chemical companies used to sell something close to it until the cheaper homemade version got crowded out and forgotten. There's a reason it disappeared, and it isn't because it stopped working. Stick with me to the end, because the one common garden plant Daniel grows specifically to make this, most folks pull it out as a weed. Let me back up and tell you what actually happened here, because it's not a mystery. It's economics. Before the Second World War, the most widely used insecticide on Earth wasn't a chemical at all. It was a flower. For more than a century, it was sold as Persian insect powder, ground up dried daisy heads, packed and shipped all over the world. That powder protected gardens and grain stores on every continent. It worked, and it worked cleanly. Then the war disrupted the supply lines, and the chemical industry saw an opening. After 1945, the laboratories went to work building copies. In 1949, they synthesized the first one, a molecule called alethrin, engineered to mimic what the flower already did naturally. Then in 1973, at a research station in England called Rothamsted, they developed permethrin. Same idea. Build a man-made version of the daisy's active compound, one you could patent, brand, and keep on a shelf. And that's the part most folks never think about. You can't patent a flower. Anybody can grow it from a seed packet. So the industry didn't improve on the flower, but it replaced it with something it could own and sell back to you season after season. Here's the stake, and it's personal for a man my age. For 30 plus years, I drove to the store every spring and bought bottles, year after year. A small fortune when you add it up for something I could have grown in the corner of one bed for the price of a seed packet. Daniel, my Amish neighbor a quarter mile down the road, hasn't bought a bottle in 50 years. He grows it. He's been growing it the whole time I was buying it. Now, I'm not going to turn this into a history lecture. You came for the flower and the recipe, and you're going to get both. I'm the exact plant, the exact mix, the pantry items that make it stick, but you needed to know why you've never heard of it first. So let's get into it. Let me start with the flower, because that's the piece everyone wants. The plant Daniel grows in a tidy row along the south edge of his vegetable patch is the pyrethrum daisy. You'll also hear it called the painted daisy or the Dalmatian chrysanthemum. The botanists give it 2 names depending on the strain: Tanacetum, Cinerera folium, and Chrysanthemum coccineum, but Daniel just calls it his bug flower, and that's about the most honest name for it I've ever heard. It looks like an ordinary daisy, white or pink petals, a yellow center, nothing that would catch your eye at a nursery. And that's exactly the point. People have been crushing this flower into insecticide for about 200 years. 200 years. It was a known, trusted, working pest control before your great-great-grandparents were born. And most American gardeners today walk right past it at the garden center because it's filed under ornamentals. I want to be straight with you about how long it took me to see it. For years, and I mean years, I watched Daniel's row of those daisies, and I assumed they were decoration, flowers along the edge of a food garden, pretty, nothing more. My own wife had taught me that flowers in a vegetable bed could mean something, but I still didn't connect it. Then one evening I was standing at the fence and I watched Daniel cut a whole armful of the spent flower heads and carry them off to his drying shed instead of his compost pile. That stopped me. You don't dry flowers you're throwing away. So I asked him, and he said, plain as anything, that's where my pesticide comes from, Bill. Always has. I'd been looking at the answer over the fence for the better part of a decade, and I'd filed it under scenery. That's the thing about this flower. You won't find it on the shelf where the bug spray lives, so you'd never think to look for it growing in the ground. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because the next question I asked Daniel was the right one. I asked him how a daisy kills a squash bug, and the answer is the part the chemical aisle never tells you. The flower heads carry a family of compounds called pyrethrins. When an insect crawls across a leaf you've sprayed or takes the spray directly, those pyrethrins go straight for its nervous system. They jam the tiny gates in the insect's nerve cells, on the sodium channels, if you want the proper word, so the nerves can't switch off. The bug can't stop firing. It goes into rapid paralysis. The folks who study this call it knockdown, and it's fast. We're talking minutes to a few hours, not days. The insect seizes up, drops, and that's the end of it. No waiting a week wondering if it worked. By the time you walk out the next morning, the aphids that coated a stem are on the soil. Done. But here's the part that took me a while to really understand. understand, and it's the part that ties back to everything I told you about why this flower disappeared. Those pyrethrins are powerful, but they are not durable. Sunlight tears them apart. Ultraviolet light, plain daylight, breaks the compounds down within hours to about a day. They don't linger. They don't build up on the plant. They hit hard and then they're gone, undone by the same sun that came up that morning. And in a warm-blooded animal, like you, me, the barn cat, a dog that wanders through, the body metabolizes them quickly too. That's why Daniel has never worried about it the way he'd worry about the 7 dust I used to keep under my kitchen sink. The poison that scared me for 30 years sticks around. This one doesn't, and that's the whole reason Daniel sprays at dusk, not morning, not midday, dusk when the light is going. I asked him about the timing once, figured it was habit, and he told me, you spray at dusk so the flower has all night to do its work before the sun undoes it. Think about what that means. He puts the spray down as the sun's leaving. The pyrethrins have the whole cool night to find the pests and drop them. Then daybreak comes, the UV light goes to work, and the active compounds are breaking down to nothing right about the time you're pouring your morning coffee. The pests are gone by morning, and so is most of the spray. That's not a coincidence, and it's not magic. It's a man who understands that the flower's biggest weakness, the fact that it falls apart in daylight, is the exact thing that makes it safe to use around your food and your family. Spray at dusk. Let it work in the dark. Let the sun clean up after it. Most American gardeners would never figure this out because they were never told the spray came from a plant in the first place. They were sold a bottle, and the bottle was engineered to do the opposite of what this flower does, to last, to cling, to stay on the leaf for weeks. Daniel's version works because it doesn't last. The version they sold me worked, in a manner of speaking, because it did. 2 completely different philosophies, and only one of them grows for the price of a seed packet in the corner of a bed. So that's the flower, and that's why it drops a bug overnight and leaves your morning garden clean. The next thing you're going to want is the exact recipe. How much flour, what to add from your own pantry to make it stick, and precisely which pests it knocks flat. Here's the recipe, and I want you to notice how little there is to it. You take roughly 1/3 to 1/2 a cup of dried flower heads, the pyrethrum daisy flowers, picked at full bloom and dried out completely, then ground up fine, almost to a powder. Daniel uses an old hand grinder for it, but a mortar and pestle works, or even your fingers if the flowers are dry enough. You steep that ground flower in 1 quart of hot water, not boiling, hot like strong tea. Let it sit until the water cools an hour or so, then strain out all the solids through a cloth. What you're left with is the liquid, and that liquid is where all the work is. Now come the pantry items. Daniel adds about a teaspoon of plain dish soap. That's not a pesticide. And the soap is a surfactant, which is a fancy word for something that breaks the surface tension so the spray spreads out and clings to the leaf and to the bug instead of beating up and rolling off. And he crushes in 2 cloves of garlic. The garlic is a repellent, an extra layer that tells the next round of bugs to keep moving. Stir it together, pour it in a sprayer, and that's your whole arsenal of flour, a quart of water, a squirt of soap, 2 cloves of garlic. That's it. You spray it at dusk, and here's what you can expect by morning. Aphids drop first, and they're soft, and they're slow, and they go fast. Squash bugs, the bane of every July garden I've ever grown, knocked flat. Cucumber beetles, those little striped ones that chew your vines to lace, gone. Flea beetles off the eggplant, cabbage worms off the broccoli. Daniel walks his beds the next morning with his coffee, and where there was a colony of aphids the night before, there's a clean leaf. I didn't believe it the first time I saw it. I thought he'd done something else, sprayed something stronger when I wasn't looking. He hadn't. It was just the flower. And now here's the part that took me years to really understand, the part that turns this from a recipe into the whole reason it disappeared. The thing that makes this spray break down so fast, the thing that makes it useless to a company that needs to ship it and store it and sell it off a shelf 18 months later, that fast breakdown is exactly what makes it safe in your garden. There's no residue waiting on your tomato 3 weeks later. There's nothing soaking into the soil. By the time you're picking that fruit, the spray is long gone. The weakness the chemical industry had to engineer out is the very thing a home gardener should want. But Daniel taught me a discipline with it too, and I want to be straight with you about this because it matters. This spray does not know the difference between a squash bug and a honeybee. It kills the helpers right along with the pests. A ladybug, a lacewing, a bee, they'll go down just the same. So Daniel almost never reaches for it, and when he does, he sprays only the one plant that's in trouble, never the whole garden, and he does it at dusk when the bees have gone home for the night, and the spray has all night to do its work and break down before the pollinators come back in the morning. He He told me once, plain as anything, I don't poison the whole table to kill one guest, Bill. That's the rule. You spray the trouble at dusk and you let the daylight clean up after you. Most American gardeners would never learn that restraint because the bottle they were sold was designed to do the opposite. To stay, to spread, to keep killing for weeks. The flower asks you to be careful. The patent asks you to stop thinking. Now, if what I'm walking you through here is making sense and you're starting to see how the Amish handle pests differently than the way most of us were taught, I want to point you to something. This spray is the last resort. It's the final layer of a 5-layer defense system Daniel taught me over 35 years, and it's all laid out in my book, The 30-Day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol. Chapter 2 walks through all 5 layers: healthy soil, companion planting, physical barriers, beneficial insects, and only then as the last line, a spray like this one. Build the first 4 right, and you'll almost never need the 5th. The book is $17 at backyardbillbooks.com. If you're tired of the chemical treadmill and you want a whole system instead of one more tip, that's where it lives. If you're watching on your TV, go ahead and grab your phone and point it at the QR code on the screen. Take your time finding it. I'll wait right here. And if you're on your phone or laptop already, the link is right down in the description. All right, let's keep going, because I promised you the reason this disappeared, and it isn't because it stopped working. Here's the math, and it's all dollars and shelving. The first problem the industry had with the flower is simple. You cannot patent it. Anybody can grow a pyrethrum daisy from a seed packet, and once they can grow it, you can't own it, you can't brand it, and you can't charge a markup on it season after season. There's no margin in a flower, but a molecule, a synthetic copy you cooked up in a lab that you can patent, that you can own for 20 years and sell at scale. So after the war, the chemical companies built allothrin in 1949, then permethrin out of Rothamsted in 1973, and a whole family of these synthetic pyrethroids. They were engineered to mimic what the flower does, but to be patentable and shelf stable. Built for the warehouse, not for the garden. The second problem was that very breakdown I just described. The flower's pyrethrins fall apart in sunlight within a day. That's wonderful in your backyard and a disaster in a supply chain. A product that degrades on the shelf can't be sold a year later. So the synthetics were engineered to be photostable, not to resist the sun, to cling, to last for weeks. The industry solved its own shelf life problem, not your pest problem, and it had an opening because the war cut off the pyrethrum supply. Most of the flower was imported, and when those imports were choked off during World War II, there was suddenly a hole in the market exactly the size the synthetics needed. By the time the dust settled, permethrin and its cousins were a multi-billion-dollar business, and the flower in the corner of Daniel's bed was a footnote. Now I'll be fair, because I want to be straight with you. The synthetics are more convenient. They're more stable, they're more uniform, they sit in a bottle for 2 years and work the same on day 700 as day 1. That's all true, but ask yourself who that convenience serves. It serves the seller. It lands on you as a bottle you buy again every spring, and it lands on your garden as a broad-spectrum poison that lingers for weeks and wipes out the ladybugs and the lacewings right along with the pests, which leaves you more dependent on the next bottle, not less. For 30 plus years, I bought that bottle, decade after decade. I paid for something that self-seeds for free in the corner of a bed. That's the cost of the suppression, and I paid it in full before Daniel ever showed me the flower. Now stick with me, because I told you at the start there's one common garden plant Daniel grows specifically to make this done, and most folks pull it out as a weed. Here it is. It's feverfew. Tanacetum parthenium, a close cousin of the pyrethrum daisy, same genus, same family of active compounds running through its little flowers. If you've gardened any length of time, you probably had feverfew show up uninvited. It self-seeds aggressively. It pops up in the path, in the cracks, along the edge of the bed, anywhere it pleases. And because it spreads like that, most gardeners yank it out by the handful and never think twice. They've been taught it's a weed. Daniel doesn't fight it. When feverfew volunteers around his beds, he lets it run. He told me, why would I pull a plant that fights my bugs for free? And that's exactly what it is. A free, self-replanting pesticide factory growing in the corner of the garden, planting next year's crop all by itself. He never buys a seed for it. He never sows a row. He just lets it do what it wants and harvests what he needs. And you use it exactly like the pyrethrum daisy. You harvest harvest the small, white, daisy-like flowers of the ones with the yellow centers at full bloom when the pyrethrin content is highest. You dry them out completely. You grind them down fine, just like the main flower, and they go into the very same recipe. 1/3 to a 1/2 cup of ground flour, 1 quart of hot water, a teaspoon of dish soap, 2 crushed cloves of garlic sprayed at dusk. Same spray, same overnight knockdown, except the raw material grew itself for nothing and reseeds itself for next year while you sleep. That's the part that gets me. The most renewable, cheapest, most reliable source of this whole thing is the one plant a generation of gardeners was taught to rip out and throw on the compost. They were pulling out the answer. Before I let you go, I want to come back to one thing. This spray works, but it doesn't pick its targets. It'll drop a ladybug just as fast as an aphid, so the smartest move isn't to spray more. It's to build a garden so full of its own helpers that you almost never need to reach for the bottle. Step-by-step guide called the 30-day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol. It's got the complete 5 defense layers, the companion planting charts, the 4-bed crop rotation, all of it laid out day by day, so you're never guessing what to do next. If you want to go deeper than what we can cover in one video, there are 2 easy ways to get it. You can click the link right down there in the description below this video, or if you're watching this on your TV or your computer, just grab your phone, open up the camera, and point it at the QR code on screen right now. It'll take you straight to the guide. No searching, no typing anything in. All right, let's keep going. A flower and a few things from the pantry. Found a spray the chemical industry quietly replaced with a patented copy because you can't put a price tag on something that grows in your own bed. Now you can grow the very thing most folks have been buying in a bottle their whole lives. If this one got you thinking, you'll want to see what Daniel taught me about catching and storing rainwater without a single hose. Another thing the Amish never stopped doing while the rest of us forgot. Daniel and his neighbors all through Plain Country are still brewing this same spray every season, the way they have for generations. Try it on a single bed this year. Watch what happens by morning and drop a note in the comments and let me know how it went. I'll see you in the next one.